Hey everybody, welcome to the Vintage Super League Play-In Tournament. I'm Reed Duke, and I'm here with Paul Rietzel. How's it going, Paul?
Awesome. How are you, Reed? I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we're week 3 of the Play-In Tournament. Are you having a good time playing Vintage?
Loving the vintage. I had a chance to watch a couple matches before my chance at commentary and then playing today, and I really enjoyed the first two matches. It's always great to see Tom Martell get horrifically unlucky. Last match, was pretty fun as well to see all of these crazy artifacts do what I've heard people complain about for years. So that was great.
Yeah, so we're going to show you Shuhei Nakamura playing Oath versus Kai Budde playing Workshops. Kind of a traditional matchup in Vintage. You know anything about this matchup?
Yeah, well, I don't know how these two decks are going to interact with each other, but I certainly have become pretty familiar with with the cards involved in these decks, and it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Kai is certainly going to have to be the proactive player. He's going to have to shut Shuhei out from doing what he wants to do. He's going to have a lot more difficult of a time coming back if Shuhei gets out to a quick start.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Oath is one of the decks that traditionally people say has a good matchup against Workshop. In the old days when Workshop was super strong before this recent restriction, people would choose Oath with the express purpose of doing well against Workshop. However, saying you have a good matchup against Workshop, it's kind of like saying you have a good matchup against Affinity in Modern. It's like, yeah, that's fine and good, but you can still just lose if they get an insane draw and kill you on turn 3.
Right. And basically, it seems like Shuhei's Oath deck is just as vulnerable to a lot of the one of the Amethyst types effects as any of the other blue decks, if you will. Does he have anything tricky or anything up his sleeve that can allow him to play more effectively under those effects?
Well, I would say the key difference is just that Shuhei can win the game by just resolving a single 2 mana spell in Oath of Druids. He doesn't have to assemble a big combo. He doesn't have to get Jace the Mind Sculptor into play. He doesn't have to neutralize everything that Kai does. If he can just somehow sneak the Oath of Druids through the cracks, that's all he needs to do to win.
Hmm, interesting. And in terms of Kai's deck, I mean, he knows what he's playing against. These players at this point both have complete deck lists, full information. Um, we might see him mulligan aggressively in this sort of a matchup, right? Since he needs a very specific type of draw to be able to preempt Shuhei from doing his crazy Black Lotus Pyrite Spellbomb shenanigans.
Yeah, I've talked to Kai a handful of times between the start of the tournament and now, and more we sort of just come to the conclusion that the Workshop deck really wants to have that turn 1 sphere effect if it's going to operate at its full potential. Letting the opponent get a turn or two to do their thing and then trying to claw back from that, it's just way harder than hitting the ground running and putting the sphere effects into play right from turn 1.
Now, Thorn of Amethyst seems to me like they forgot to add the 2/1 creature to. Was that a design flaw? Did they misprint the card when they made it, or is that just that intentional? Do you think?
Yeah, people seem to lose respect for that attacking for 2 quality of all of the cards in your deck. I
Yeah.
think actually almost all of the cards in your deck can attack for 2.
No, I mean, honestly though, I look at these workshop decks and I think to myself, they need very specific things to go right. And obviously, Card Mishra's Workshop itself absurdly powerful. Lodestone Golem was a card that was really silly, so good that it had to be restricted. But sometimes these decks, they have too much of their kill component, or they have too much of their disruption component, and they're not able to actually, you know, disrupt and pressure the opponent at the same time. And I think that's where we're seeing them kind of
Right.
successful.
Yeah, and I guess that's the price you pay for getting the actual card Mishra's Workshop, and that's the big difference between Thorn of Amethyst and Dahlia. It in reality is just that you can tap Mishra's Workshop and play Thorn of Amethyst. Sometimes you can play Thorn of Amethyst and another card in the same turn on the first turn of the game. But that's when everything's going right.
All right, prediction. Is this one of those matchups where it's as simple as who wins the die roll as the favorite, or do you think that Shuhei has an edge with his oath strategy?
A little bit of both. Certainly, the die roll is still going to be big, and as we mentioned, both these decks are just capable of such powerful starts that if one player has a great draw, it could be lopsided one way or the other. I'm going to pick Shuhei though as the favorite in this match,
I'm gonna pick Kai.
and with that, we're ready to start. All right, let's take a look at the opening hands. I see that Shuhei gets to be on the play, and he's got some fast mana. Turn 1 Oath of Druids if he wants it, but he's missing the Forbidden Orchard, which is the other half of the combo.
And he has
Kai, on the other hand,
no other card drawing or disruption, right? So he has the ability to force basically one thing, but then he's really relying on top of his deck to get him.
yeah, so sort of a classic mulligan decision that you can encounter in any format when you just have all the pieces in place, but you can't actually do anything.
Hmm.
Do you have any like guidelines that you use when you face this kind of hand?
Sure, my guideline is that the older the format, the more likely I am to mulligan a hand like this.
Okay, so in other words, the faster the game is, the more you want to aggressively mulligan
Yeah,
hands like this.
and also
Okay.
the more the higher percentage, the more of the range of hands, 6 card hands that can draw you out of being down a card more quickly and have it be irrelevant essentially. So I would have been tempted to mulligan this hand if I was Shuhei, but certainly I'll defer to his knowledge on Oath.
Both players have kept. What's Kai got going on here? He doesn't have the workshop. He doesn't have the Black Lotus, but he does have some good stuff going on.
Yeah, we heard Kai in his commentary for the last match mention that if you have a turn one sphere with workshops, it's awfully difficult to mulligan his hand. In this case, he has a turn one sphere and the ability to strip mine his opponent. So I certainly, he certainly is not thrilled with his hand, but certainly pretty hard to mulligan as well.
You want to know the special thing about Soul Ring, though? It's the single card in Kai's deck that can get hit by Mental Misstep.
Oh no!
But Shuhei, he does have Mental Misstep, but that was sort of there as his force of will fodder, so it's not all bad for Kai.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Kai is gonna strip this tropical island, and he's a land away from Null Rod, really really shutting down Shuhei's game.
Yeah,
Not
he may decide to try to get the Null Rod into play first, because if he can't before the Null Rod enters the battlefield, Shuhei has so much mana that stopping Tropical Island shouldn't matter that much. But I like how you point out that 1-2 punch that can shut Shuhei down a little bit.
And we're going to see one of my favorite plays in modern or vintage, which is the hard cast force of will here, which I thoroughly enjoy.
I thought you were talking about ensnaring bridge with 5 cards still in your hand.
So the least likely play I can make is just to play Flex at this point, right? That's not going to happen.
Play for Phyrexian Revoker and just guess what Shuhei's going to draw next.
And let him trigger Oath.
So we should mention Ensnaring Bridge. This is the thing that's unique about Kai's stacks list, and it could be an impactful card in this matchup if Shuhei is leaning on Grizzlebrand to win him the game. I mean, he can still draw a lot of cards, but cannot attack with any of his creatures if Kai gets a bridge into play.
Although, again, this is what we were talking about before the match, with the minimal amount of damage pressure that Kai's deck is producing. 14 cards is going to provide you a lot of answers to what ails you. Look at that beautiful draw of Brainstorm right there by Shuhei.
Yeah, with the fetch land uncracked, he's set up perfectly. So I actually just lost visual on the game. Can you still see what's going on?
I'm in the same boat right now. So let's try to get that back. Got it. I can see clearly now. So Shuhei
Kai
finished.
found a Black Lotus, which is going to help him keep pace a little bit, but Shuhei found his main deck, Ancient Grudge.
Yeah. And we talked about, when Shu had the opening hand, what he was really lacking was some sort of card draw to get him, through. He had the mana and the oath and the counter magic, and of course to find brainstorm. With his, I think, believe second draw step was, other than ancestral, about the best thing he could have drawn.
So we saw him use one of the most fair Black Lotuses ever, which is just to help him hardcast a Force of Will.
Yes.
It's one step removed from like Black Lotus Plains play 2 White Knights, which we might get to see something like that next round if we're lucky.
We should be so lucky. So I wasn't able to remember what it is that he just shuffled away here with this brainstorm, or with the polluted delta from the brainstorm. But obviously he needs to crack to be able to make mana before Null Rug comes into play to be able to cast this growth.
Okay, so he's floating mana and he's going to destroy the Null Rod, presumably.
One would imagine, yeah.
Worth noting, he doesn't have any green mana in play, so it's going to be a while before he can flash back that Grudge. And he still has not found anything to help him trigger Oath of Druids, so the game continues. Problem is, you mentioned at the start of this match that Kai was going to have to be the aggressor, and he has not been able to muster anything that's putting a clock on Shuhei. Until he can find something like a smokestack, it's almost just like he's waiting around to lose to a top deck Forbidden Orchard.
Right. And Kai is quite a bit away from being able to cast anything. He needs a workshop or multiple other somethings to be able to.
That's a big draw though. This Crucible can help him lock Shuhei out of mana from lands at least, and eventually once he starts hitting his Mishra's Factories, can attack without triggering Oath of Druids.
How's Treasure Cruise in this spot, would you say?
That's, perhaps even better than the Brainstorm that we saw earlier.
Oh wow, so you can delve an extra card?
Yeah, you can delve an extra card to cast a Treasure Cruise through Sphere of Resistance.
Learn something new every day.
Don't ask me to explain why that's the rule. I have no idea, but it's just one of those things about Vintage.
This is a true story. Patrick Chapin and I played Treasure Cruise Delver with Snapcaster Mage at the World Championships in Modern. Actually, you defeated me in that particular tournament in Modern. And we did not know during the entire course of the tournament that you could Snapcaster Mage back Treasure Cruise and delve cards to Treasure Cruise again. So neither of us utilized that particular ability. Despite
So you just kind of looked at the two cards and you're like, nah, there's no way. There's no way they would allow that. And you never even checked.
we assumed they wouldn't be so reckless as to allow something like that to happen.
Well, now you know.
Yeah. I think I was watching someone else play on stream, and I'm like, oh my god, we really missed the boat.
And then you get to hope to hoping like, it probably wouldn't have mattered anyway. It probably never came up at Worlds that I could have done that.
No, the real hope is that none of it was on camera. That's what you really have to pray.
Yeah. Wow, okay, so there's Jace the Mind Sculptor. Big card against Workshop, big card in this spot here. Just really perfect for Shuhei. This is the kind of card you want to see on a stalled board to lock up a game that was already going pretty well for you.
And this is exactly what we talked about. I mean, Kai had his Sphere, he had some of his disruptive elements, he had some Null Rods that Shuhei had to fight through, but because he, we saw with the restriction of Lodestone Golem, because he's lacking that pressure element, and because of Shuhei's Oath of Druids that Kai is unable to remove, Shuhei has just had all the time in the world to be able to craft a beautiful hand with the ridiculous blue cards that exist in Vintage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I made fun of Kai's pressure, but here he is with a 7. So, you think 7 turns will be enough for Shuhei to put together some sort of a bigger plan.
We had a crazy match the first week where Shuhei had Jace the Mind Sculptor in play. He had like up to 9 or 11 counters or something. Dave Williams just got through for the last couple of points with Mishra's Factory.
Mm-hmm. And if I remember correctly, Dave, the flash ability on Containment Priest was very effective in preventing Jace from defending Shuhei's life total. Dave could obviously just flash it back into play if he tried to use the -1 ability. In this case, obviously, Mishra's Factory also cannot be dealt with by Jace.
Yeah. I don't necessarily predict that we're going to see a repeat of that, especially Shuhei has found Dig Through Time, which he's gone through a lot of cards and still not found Forbidden Orchard, but it's just a matter of time.
Once he
Word
does
Coil Engine, not very effective in the face of Jace -1, or in the face of Oath of Druids for that matter.
And he's still short anyway, of course, by another 2 mana. If he does assemble the Forbidden Orchard with his Oath of Druids, what can Kai still do at that point? What's his does he have any recourse?
Well, Kai has done a reasonable job getting Shuhei to a low life total, so Grizzlebrand cannot go crazy like it sometimes can, and Kai has Ensnaring Bridge to maybe stop Grizzlebrand from killing him outright. However, special thing about Shuhei's Oath deck is that he has the what they call the Bomberman combo, which is Auriok Salvagers, Black Lotus, and Pyrite Spellbomb to deal infinite damage even through an Ensnaring Bridge. I actually have not figured how that works with a Sphere of Resistance in play. Seems like Black Lotus no longer nets you mana, so it would be a slower infinite damage over the course of infinite turns, but probably still good in this case.
Although, of course, once he's oathed up both of his relevant creatures, he's then free to explosives away his own oath as well as all of the thorn effects, and then he can just go to work.
Yep, great point.
Shuhei's deck kind of reminds me of a way better version of the modern deck Ad Nauseam with the 2 different win conditions. He's got the Grizzlebrand attacking you, or the immediately infinitely kill you with the Salvagers Bomberman combo to get around something like Ensnaring Bridge. Whereas if you play against Ad Nauseam, of course, their primary plan is to Lightning Storm and discard all their lands. But if you have a ley line or something of that effect, it's just draw a card from an empty library.
Yeah, it is really smart to build, for a deck like this where you have access to almost your whole library with Oath of Druids, it's smart to build in multiple different ways to win the game and not just be vulnerable to a single card like Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah, it strikes me that, and again, I haven't played a lot of Vintage, but it must happen very frequently in Vintage where some crazy combination of cards, a crazy card comes out, and you think to yourself, my deck has literally nothing that I can do to meaningfully impact that whatsoever. So I guess that's what appeals to people having access to cards like Force of Will and Engineer Explosives and Jace the Mind Sculptor that are very flexible answers to whatever it is, the 15,000 cards they've made in Magic's history.
Yeah, the Storm deck that I traditionally play in Vintage, for all the powerful things it can do, the turn 1 wins and, drawing 7 cards and Mind's Desire for 10 and all that stuff, if my opponent just goes Island Extract, of course, search your opponent's library, remove 1 card from the game, I can't win anymore. It's something as simple as that, and it's like the thing that, I lose sleep over. Is this ever going to happen to me? But.
Well, if I lose my 2 matches tonight, I know what cards to bring for the...
So there's the Forbidden Orchard. At this point, he almost doesn't even need it, though. He's Time Walk with Jason play. It's just in great shape.
Oh. Force of Will. What do you get for the guy who has everything? You know what I mean? That's the thing. What is the most amount of sunburst counters you've ever put on engineer explosives?
Hmm. I would say 4 for me. Sure, I've killed some Jace the Mind Sculptors with Engineer Explosive. Never gotten all 5, though.
Mhm.
I remember some people being very excited about the prospect of Painful Truths for 4 against
Mhm.
something like a Thalia or a
Right?
Sphere of
I've done it.
Resistance. That
I've
you
done it.
have?
Oh yeah, in modern.
Wow. I think Painful Truths is a card playable in Vintage.
It's a good question. I've seen some of it in some deck lists. Uh, it's a lot of mana. That's the issue, right? 3 mana is so many in
Yeah.
Vintage.
There's a funny dynamic, which is that colored mana can be an issue in Vintage because you have this fast mana, but it's not always reliably the color you want it. However, it's not colorless mana that you're adding. It's usually just random colors, or like
Mm.
off-color moxes and stuff. So Painful Truths might, be able to draw you 3 cards more often than you might expect. But that said, 3 mana is a lot, and there's a lot of really good card draw to compete with.
Does Shoei even care about this Revoker at this point? All he cares about is what's going to stop him from oathing next turn.
He's already got Engineer Explosives on 2 counters. I don't even know.
He could
Kai
name,
can name the Engineer Explosives,
yeah, but then he could just bounce it with Jace.
right? Or just win with Jace.
The misery of the non-blue player when he falls way behind in Vintage is something I'm starting to really enjoy.
Yeah, he knows people are watching too. He can't just concede, even though he probably wants to.
Right. I a famous showman on Sundays with his 7 Pro Tour victories and some done in very dramatic fashion.
Yep. He hasn't had to lose on camera as much as the rest of us, though. So we'll savor this moment.
Yeah. I believe I can't see the chat, but I do think Shuhei called no scooping. So I think that's in there. Kai's best way to win would be to draw like a Lotus and fire off a Demonic Attorney, and then have Shuhei not agree.
Now, how much do you know about the very old history of the Pro Tour? Because I don't know the full story, but I heard that Kai won his invitational with something to do with an anti card.
Ooh, good question. I don't know the answer to that. Of course,
It
we're
was something
coming.
along the lines of the finals, or one of the events in the invitational was not determined by who won the more games. It was by who accumulated the
Oh,
most
right,
value by winning anti cards.
right. And Jeweled Bird was involved, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kai ended up using Jeweled Bird to lose a less valuable anti card, and that was part of the reason why the not we the whole world has been gifted with Void Mage Prodigy, and we for all these years. Is it true that Kai himself drew the picture at the Void Mage Prodigy? Do you know that?
All right, so we're going to see Oath actually get activated here. And there's the Oriok Salvagers. So not
Yes.
the more devastating of the 2 creatures here, since it doesn't look like he milled. Well, he already has the Black Lotus in his graveyard.
Yeah. So he has infinite mana already, and a Jace and a Dak Faden.
So I'll be impressed if he can't find something to use this mana on. He can explosives away everything.
Yep.
He can just kill every permanent in play and then just put the explosives into play on 5 and leave it there. Shuhei down to 4 though from the Mistress Factory hit, so he is going to win this game, but he can't be too reckless.
Should have played a Sunbeam Spellbomb.
Yeah. You don't see too many infinite life combos in Vintage. I don't think that's really a winning strategy in this format.
Is it because there's too many Laboratory Maniacs?
Maybe among other things.
The real answer is that between Jace Ultimate and any number of other ways, there's just a ton of non-damage ways to kill and ways to deal infinite damage in Vintage. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Infinite damage, non-damage ways to win. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of times it just is both hard to assemble and doesn't even do that much for you. I mean, even a workshop deck could just smokestack you down to 0 permanents, and presumably you've drawn a few extra cards and they haven't. They could just sit there and wait for you to deck yourself.
I'll be curious to hear from Kai after this match if he thought there was a path to victory, or if most of the ways he could envision himself winning this game involved a misstep from a misplay, I should say, to avoid the same word from Shuhei. I would imagine it's the latter, but potentially it's the former, and it's just something I'm missing.
Yeah, I mean, it's this. You see this type of game dynamic a fair amount in all formats of Magic, where it's almost like the game is so close to decided, but you do have to go through the motions because there are really strange scenarios that can come up, and yeah, the player who's ahead could make some small, misstep that opens the door, and the game is really not over until it's over, because of both the random element of the cards coming off the top and the human element of somebody actually having to make the decisions
And the
close out
internet
the game.
element of people's internet cutting out and cutting
Yeah,
out. Capture all the equity you can.
that's probably what Kai's really playing to.
Germany famous for very, very strong DSL.
You'll notice, I'm not sure if Kai was the host of this game, but they actually deviated from VSL sanctioned policy of 40-minute clocks, and they've got the full hour. So they're gonna make us they're gonna make us sit through this.
Well, if he's listening, I'll offer my opponent next round, Brian Kelly, the option to do 5-minute clocks if he's willing to, and we'll see.
Yeah, you actually proposed that for the Magic Online Championship that happened this past weekend, that they have just 10-minute clocks, Blitz Magic.
Yeah, 10-minute clock is more reasonable. I think 5-minute clock would be okay for some formats, but probably not for a World Championship.
Okay.
10 minutes is more than anyone should.
What about some kind of compromise, like you have 20 minutes, but you have to play against 3 or 4 opponents at the same time, with 3 or 4 20-minute clocks?
Let's do it. Yeah, I know my opinions are not very popular regarding the clocks. But whenever I'm playing Magic Online and I see that I have like over 14 minutes more on my clock than my opponent, I just see my life slipping away through my fingers. So,
Okay, so the engineered explosives have taken care of the sphere of resistance. Now you see the Auriok Salvagers combo coming into full effect here. Shuhei has not found the spell bomb yet, but he can see a lot of cards between the Jason play and the two additional planeswalkers in his hand. The Preordain, Dak Faden's going to see more cards.
he can just incidentally clean up this Mox Emerald too, right? Since he's gonna be able to get all of his Moxen back with
Yep,
Infinite
he
Mana.
absolutely can. Okay, and Kai has finally tapped out.
All
He's a
right.
proud man, but he's done here.
Hopefully, we get two more just like that.
Okay, so coming off the sideboard, you see Kai go right to the Grafdigger's cages. So he wants to shut down Oath of Druids. He wants to force Shuhei to play a fair game like the rest of the blue decks that the Workshop player has a much easier time beating.
Mhm.
Shuhei, I think it's as much about what's coming out as what's coming in, and the mental missteps and the fluster storms are very nearly dead cards against Workshop. They're coming right out. Couple extra artifact removal spells. I think a second copy of Ancient Grudge.
You might not know this, but Ancient Grudge is actually my least favorite card that they've ever made in Magic.
As an affinity player, I believe that.
Well,
What in
not just
particular
as
bothers
affinity
you about it?
player. I just think Shatter has been like an effect which it has gone in and out of playability in constructed formats, or had throughout time as artifacts got more and less popular, or as they came in and out of vogue, and they made a card that is so much better than Shatter that it's offensive. It's so good, Ancient Grudge.
Counterpoint: artifacts have also gotten better since the time of Shatter.
But then again, I've had many a Yoshin soldier shattered, and that means I've been down a mana. Now I have to get it shattered with my back.
I liked the days of Rack and Ruin.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, you could Cunning Wish for that.
Mm-hmm.
You could just board in a bunch if that's the way you want to go. But
What about honest magic, like detonate? You want to kill Wormcoil Engine, it's going to take 3 detonates and 7 mana. That's just like the way it's 9 mana, rather.
my first Grand Prix was Grand Prix New Jersey Mirrodin block constructed, where Affinity was the best deck. Not just the best deck, but it was the best deck by far, and it was about 50% of the field. So what I did was I built a red-green deck with 4 copies of every card that could kill an artifact, all in my main deck. 4 Oxidize, 4 Electric Static Bolt,
Shaman.
4 Viridian Shaman, all that stuff. And I think I went 1 and 2 against Affinity in that tournament.
Which I think was above expectation for that deck in that format, if I recall correctly. All right, let's see if Kai can put Shuei in the torture chamber here. Nope.
Yep. Bad draw from Kai, and this is what we talked about. I think he's going to really try to look for the turn 1 sphere effect. The ley line is tempting. It's hard to mulligan a hand when you have the ley line in your opening hand, but I would throw that one back. And he's going to like this much better.
Explain to me these mind break traps.
uh,
Isn't that an anti?
okay, so the only thing I can think of with the Mind Break trap is that Shuhei wanted to maintain a density of blue cards in his deck for Force of Will, especially being on the draw. He probably valued Force of Will as a really important card to see in his opening hand. And possibly Mind Break Trap is just better than Mental Misstep and Flusterstorm, since you actually could conceivably cast it.
Too bad he doesn't have full 4. Does he have access to 4? Look at Kai, by the way, the VSL veteran with his Scry on screen so everyone can see it. That is.
He's a man of the people.
Yeah.
Shuhei has kept this hand, I guess, just on the back of Ancestral Recall. You can have a couple dead cards in your hand if you have an Ancestral Recall to just get you a few more to replace them.
It's like a dream cache. Is that the right? Is that the card I'm thinking of? Sift. It'll probably end up being more like.
Are you
You know,
suggesting that he's just going to discard the Mind Break traps to hand size?
well, it depends. I mean, he's going to cast Ancestral. Well, not going to cast Ancestral for a while. Oh,
Wow. Shuhei's been on fire tonight. He should go buy some lottery tickets when he
yeah.
finishes
There's
VSL
a
for the evening.
yeah. There's a debate over, I think, some people whether or not Lotus or Ancestral is the best card of all time, in legal formats. But so far tonight, it seems like the best card of all time is just whatever's on top of Shuhei's deck. So does Kai want to get this Revoker out to force him to crack the? Or does it stop mana abilities?
It does, yeah. Phyrexian Revoker is different from Pithing Needle in that Revoker can name any non-land card and it will stop even mana abilities, but it cannot name lands. Pithing Needle, other way around, it can name lands, but it will only stop non-mana abilities. So the Revoker takes care of the Black Lotus, and Shuhei has to somehow battle to get this Oath of Druids into play, since Kai has done him the favor, the dubious favor of putting a creature onto the battlefield.
I don't hate the play from Kai, honestly, though. I think he's got to get a clock out there, and his hand is full of stuff that's going to mess with Shuhei's mana. And I think letting Shuhei untap with a Lotus was just going to be a disaster. I mean, he couldn't know that Shuhei had 3 dead cards in his hand. So
I completely agree.
yeah,
Yeah, you got to take care of the Lotus. It's your whole game plan to cut the mana of the Oath player.
golly, and he just draws beautiful mana cards to put out into play now. To help
Yeah.
him cast Oath next turn. And as it stands, there's nothing to prevent Oath from coming into play next turn.
No, Kai would love to find a Grafdigger's Cage, and that would really force the game into a more of a fair dynamic. Oh, wow.
Now, this is a Magic game right here.
Yeah. These guys are almost making us obsolete as commentators. It's like, hey, what's Kai looking for here? And just go, well, let's wait and see what he draws. That's probably what he's looking for.
So he can end this turn with a Cage and a 3rd Thorn effect in play. Oh no, I'm sorry, he can't cast both of those.
Well, there's no rush on the Cage. It's almost nice to wait until Shuhei commits the Oath of Druids and commits the mana to cast it.
Wow, he found a way to uncrack his Lotus if he needs to, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, he doesn't have enough for. No, he does have enough to cast Jace if he wants to. But Jace is pretty likely to just get attacked and killed. So he wants to protect it. Right. So he's going to play the Oath here. Of course, not knowing that Kai has Cage.
Yeah.
That Revoker's beautiful also.
You think he's going to name the Soul Ring?
Well, this turn, of course, he's going to cast the Cage. But the next turn, he'll be able to name Soul Ring, which is, that's a rack and ruin, basically.
Mm-hmm. More of an Uktabi orangutan, since it gets the attack for 2 benefit.
You think Shuhei was just one mind break trap away from being able to? The fourth one would have been kind of great.
Yeah. Shuhei, when he looked at the opening hand, he was hoping for a very, very specific turn one from Kai.
Right. Right. Mox, Lotus, Worm Coil.
Okay, so that's a 4-mana Pyrite Spellbomb,
Mhm.
which can kill the Phyrexian Revoker, free up Black Lotus. But he can take his time on that also. He can wait.
So we might see Kai play Revoker with the same naming the same card.
I think Shuhei actually even overtapped for that. I saw him with 1 mana and left his mana pool. A little bizarre. This Urborg, a card you don't see a ton of in stacks. I think Kai's playing it because he has a couple of bizarre Bagdads in his deck.
Mhm.
But it's also pretty nice with Ancient Tomb, especially since Kai has a slower version of stacks where he wants the game to drag on a bit more. Also creates an interesting dynamic of fetch lands with Urborg against Wasteland. It's more for the players to think about.
One, two, three, one, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's gonna be able to play again Jace, but unfortunately it's the same situation, which is that like we talked about before, because Kai has a board presence, Jace is just not as broken,
Yeah.
and because it's gonna cost 7 mana.
And a thing about this Oath deck, it's almost, well, it is a combo deck, really. It has so many of its slots devoted to weird niche cards to make the Oath of Druids function the way it's supposed to. So when you have a deck like that, sometimes you can draw a bunch of extra cards and still not find the answer that you need. It's not like a dedicated control deck where you dig a little bit with your Jace and then you kill all your opponent's stuff and the game is over. It's Shuhei can brainstorm and he can be drawing into Auriok Salvagers and more Oath of Druids and Forbidden Orchards and more Mindbreak traps and stuff. Actually, an Auriok Salvagers would be pretty nice here. 2/4 body.
So he's gonna fire off this Jace. I'm guessing just to use the brainstorm ability.
Yeah, he may use the +2, which will force Kai to take multiple turns attacking the Jace, and it also it does have the effect of letting Shuhei see a few cards deeper in his library. He's using it on himself, which is a play I like to do a lot.
Scry 1.
Scry 1, yeah.
He built himself a Darksteel pendant. Am I dating myself with that reference? What is it? What is the newer version of the card called?
Crystal Ball.
No, there's a Scry 1 though.
There's an equipment from Theros, Witch's Eye, I think. Equipped creature gets to scry 1.
Yeah, I think there's a playable though.
What exactly does it do? Just
an
artifact that lets you scry 1?
Like Darksteel pendant. Maybe it's a cantrip or something like that, and that's why it's playable. But there's like a card that has the ability to tap and scry 1. I could just be wrong. First time for everything. Kai wants to get this Null Rod into play.
Oh wow, that's big actually, because with the 3 spheres in play, cutting Shuhei's mana in half is going to make it very difficult for him to do much at all, let alone cast 2 spells in the same turn.
And of course, Shuhei could have Mindbreak trapped it if only Kai had cast 2 other spells and Shuhei had a Simian Spirit Guide in his hand.
He does get to untap with Jace here, which means he can dig a little bit deeper. And if he ever does find one of those ancient grudges, he can start going to town.
Yeah, grudge. Beautiful.
Okay, Dak Faden, a big card against Artifacts, big card against the Workshop deck. Kai doesn't have anything that's particularly vulnerable to being stolen. All the cards in play pretty much do the same thing whether they're on either side of the battlefield.
Can it steal a creature?
It can steal an artifact creature, yeah.
So then he's got a blocker.
Yep. It's going to cost him 6 mana to put that into play, which is all of his lands.
Yeah, but that cuts Kai's clock in half, and it wasn't.
Yeah, and puts another Planeswalker onto the battlefield that Kai will have to attack. So you might see Kai have to use the Mishra's Factory to kill Dak Faden before anything worse happens.
Which means another turn of untapping with Jace.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we find Kai kind of needing to draw something here.
Another Mishra's Factory would be very nice because he could pump up the first one to make it big enough to kill Jace, and then you'd have 2 resilient creatures instead of just 1.
Mm-hmm.
Another nice thing about the Urborg, it lets Mishra's Factory tap for mana for doing things other than casting artifacts from your hand. This has been a cool game.
Yeah.
This is great.
And obviously you predicted that Shuhei would win, and you thought the Oath deck was favored here. We saw a game in which Kai had a pretty good draw, and Shuhei triple mulliganed effectively with 3 cards that one of them may end up getting exiled to this Force of Will, but really 3 complete bricks. And he's at least in this game. He may actually be favored at this point.
I think so, yeah. I think Shuhei's ahead here. One of the most impactful play Kai can make before we see what his draw step is to cast Smokestack, but Shuhei just has a lot more permanence than Kai. And in fact, Kai actually is a few mana short of casting the Smokestack, but just goes to show that the Stacks deck doesn't have the ability to come back from behind that a lot of other decks do in Vintage.
So no, Kai is going to Oath something.
But he can't put anything to play because of the Grafdigger's Cage. He might be thinking whether or not he wants to put some stuff in his graveyard. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the answer to that. I can't really think about... Oh, I guess he has Crucible of Worlds that could come up. Oh, you know what it does? With a Grafdigger's Cage in play, it ensures that you're going to draw a creature with Oath of Druids, because you'll mill yourself till you hit a creature. That creature cannot go into play, so it just stays in your library, and that's your draw step for the turn.
Interesting.
So Kai, I think, wanted to draw Phyrexian Revoker, but he actually got whammied here by the 1-of Lodestone Golem. Okay, so Mishra's Factory coming in. Is it going to attack the Jace or the Dak Faden?
This might be a one problem at a time situation.
I think so. Yeah. And the best Kai can muster is a Mox Sapphire on this turn.
You shouldn't have put out all those silly thorns. It's messing him up here.
No, he's managing very carefully. He's just playing 1 spell per turn to make sure the Mind Break traps can't take their full effect.
Look, in Magic, there's 3 things that are important, as you know. The third most important thing is to win. The second most important thing is to have fun, and the first most important thing is to not make a fool of yourself. And Kai does not want to walk into this mind break trap if he's going to lose.
Mm-hmm. So Shuhei actually got pretty nice advantage off of the Urborg in this game, which is that he's been tapping his fetch lands for mana this whole time. Now, after he's got Jason play and brainstormed, he looks down and finds himself with free ways to shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he finally found Ancient Grudge, which that's going to be a game changer here. I predict the first thing he's going to do is destroy Grafdigger's Cage, which will both free up Oath of Druids as a possible route to victory and, of course, let the Ancient Grudge get flashed back later in the game.
Beautiful. So he's not going to grudge this cage with Oath on the stack, I'm guessing.
Well, this is Kai's Oath trigger on the stack.
Which is why
So
I would say
yeah.
it would be pretty bad. By the way, Matt Sperling just sent me a note. The card I was thinking of is Seer's Lantern. The card that's
Oh, Seer's Lantern, of course. That's one I played quite a lot.
yeah.
Big draw for Kai, actually. Tolarian Academy is the best mana producer in his deck, and now he's going to have access to 6, 9, 10, 11 mana, which is not... Oh, yeah, can't use the Mock Sapphire. But, yeah, not quite enough to cast both of his spells. Maybe it is if he casts an artifact first and then taps the Academy for 7.
We could see something get Mind Break trapped.
Hardcast Mindbreak Trap.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Forbidden Orchard of producing black mana.
On Shuhei's side, he's got 7 lands. So if Kai casts Lodestone Golem first, which costs only 5 mana because it's not affected by Thorn of Amethyst, then you're going to see Shuhei possibly respond with maybe a Mindbreak Trap, or maybe he just wants to stick with the Ancient Grudge game plan.
The wall's kind of closing in here on the German Juggernaut, despite him having a Juggernaut on the stack.
He really needed a Seer's Lantern in this game.
Was that a misstep there? Might he have wanted to tap that Forbidden Orchard for black mana off of Urborg?
Well, he actually didn't counter the Lodestone Golem. He went for the Ancient Grudge on Grafdigger's Cage in response. And now Kai has 2 creatures.
Oh, wow. That is beautiful.
And poor Kai now does not have 7 artifacts to cast the Smokestack off Tolarian Academy.
Would you say that turn went exactly like Kai planned, or similar to how he planned it?
You know, I don't think it came as a surprise to Kai. He knew that this was a post-sideboard game where Shuhei has access to Ancient Grudge. And a couple turns with Jason play, you know, you sort of have to start thinking that something bad is going to happen to you like that.
Hmm.
There's Grizzlebrand.
Yeah. I think that's
If Kai can just manage to survive for 7 or 8 turns, he can smokestack away the Grizzlebrand. But he really doesn't have much defense against a 7 power flyer. I wonder if he left Ensnaring Bridge in his deck. You know, it seems like a card that would get better after sideboarding when you can pair it with Grafdigger's Cage to, you know, shut down, or maybe pair it with Leyline of the Void to shut down the Auriok Salvager's plan.
I just realized that, of course, he's going to, you know, even though there might have been safer plays, I guess, of course he's going to grudge the cage, because if he grudges anything else, it turns off the ability to grudge anything else. You might as well grudge the cage first.
Yeah.
And you can provide something else if you want to.
Yeah, the only other thing he could have really considered there would be to counter the Lodestone Golem, but I like just going for the throat there. I mean, Kai has put himself in a position where he can't cast a lot of spells in the same turn, and you're pretty much guaranteeing that you're going to get to untap with an End Oath on your turn. Seems great to me. Okay, so Grizzlebrand crashes in. Kai untaps and has some triggers. He gets to put one counter on the smokestack. This is a hard way to do it. So if we see, as we predict, Grizzlebrand putting the finishing touches on this game, the next match is your match, Paul, against vintage champion Brian Kelly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Brian obviously a lot more experience playing the vintage than I have, and he has a deck that's pretty good against my White Weenie aggro deck. So I got my work cut out for me, but I am very lucky. So,
well, what's he got? He's got Gloom. He's got Zealous Persecution.
Massacre, Dread of Night, Ground and Salt,
Curse Scroll.
Execute, which I think was a little bit over the line, but yeah. Whatever the Legate is from Mercadian Masks that you can put into play for free if they have a Plains out, he has that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think it's the red one.
What about the Western Paladin or the Eastern Paladins? You got that one?
Yeah, almost certain. Still Moon Cavalier. I thought that was not necessary, but
Are you playing any protection creatures in your White Weenie deck?
I don't know, but I don't. Nope.
It's one of the most iconic, abilities of White Weenie.
At least he didn't bring Isan Shade.
That's a tough one to beat. Shuhei actually has 2 Isan Shades in his sideboard. Against White Weenie, he takes out the Grizzlebrand. He just oaths right into Isan Shade.
So what do you think about playing it out in Vintage? I mean, Kai obviously has shown an affinity for it, no pun intended. Whereas other people are very quick scoopers. I think that I understand both approaches. You love to play it out.
I love to play it out, yeah. I don't know. I understand both approaches.
So, Shuhei Nakamura, ladies and gentlemen, takes out German Juggernaut.
Yeah, so Shuhei advances. I wish I could tell you what the stakes of that match was. Here we have the bracket. This is perfect. So this means Shuhei is 1 match away for clinching a spot into Vintage Super League Season 5.
Right. If I understand correctly, he plays the loser of David Williams' match in the winners bracket coming up in a little bit later against Steve. So there you see the match at the top. The loser of match 13, Dave and Steve will play Shuhei for a slot, and then the loser of myself versus Brian will play against I believe it's Bob Maher for the other slot. So
okay, great.
We have some clean win-ins.
Yeah. Well, I certainly wish you luck in yours.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have a couple more chances. If you lose this one, you have both the losers bracket and the single elimination play-in tournament, which is where I'm currently sitting. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to claim a spot in this play-in tournament, so pretty cool.
Yeah, my path is, if I understand it correctly, I can win this round, or I can win the next round, or then I have to win 3 in a row. That's basically how I get in. So obviously, all of the easiest paths involve me winning one of my next two
Right.
matches. But for anyone who's played a lot of Grand Prix or Pro Tours, that I need to win one of the next two situation is oftentimes seems like one of the hardest
Hmm.
to win in match. We'll see how it goes.
All right, well, that's it for us, but stay tuned.